Call to order. Dickinson City Commission meeting for Tuesday, May 19th, 2020. Let the record show that all commissioners are present. First item up is the order of business. Mr. Guy, any changes to the order of business?
President Decker, there are no changes. We will note that this meeting has to end at 6 o'clock to go into a Board of Equalization meeting.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Guy? Not, I'd look for a motion on the order of business.
So move.
We have a motion to approve the order of business.
Second.
For the second. All in favor of approving the order of business as stands, state aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. The consent agenda, are there any items on the consent agenda that commissioners you wish to discuss? If not, I'd look for a motion on the consent agenda.
Move to approve.
We have a motion to approve by Commissioner Trustum,
Second.
with a second by Commissioner Frederick. Any further discussion, questions on the consent agenda? Not, we'll vote. Mrs. Trustum,
Aye.
Mr. Frederick,
Aye.
Mr. Steiner,
Aye.
Ms. Walla.
Aye.
Chair votes aye, motion carries on consent agenda. Move right into our administrative and finance this evening, and the first thing up is an audit engagement letter, and that'll be presented by our Deputy City Administrator Carlson.
Thank you, President Decker and Commissioners. As was spoken in our work session, I have 3 proposals for a 2019 audit work. And the reason we went out for a proposal for the public is so that to let them know we've had the same firm since I know of since 2009. And in best practices, we need to make sure that we get a new firm at least 5 to 6 years, look at a new perspective at our audit, and it's just best practices on that. With that, the 3 proposals for a 1-year contract would be Eide Bailey at $55,000, Widmer Roll out of Fargo would be $38,000, and then we looked at the North Dakota State Auditor's Office with an estimation of between $21,500 to $22,500, and right now, at this time, the state cannot put us on their list to be able to do the 2019 due to some staff issues. So I am asking for your consent and approval that I can sign a professional services contract with Widmer Roll at the $38,000 for a 1 year with contingency of a 2 year if we cannot get it back onto the state. For that approval. If you have any questions, I stand for them.
Any questions for Mrs. Carlson? Hearing no questions, I'd look for a motion on this professional services contract.
Move to approve.
We have a motion to approve by Commissioner Steiner,
Second.
with a second by Commissioner Trustum. Any further discussion, comments? Hearing none, we'll vote. Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mrs. Trustum?
Aye.
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Ms. Walla?
Aye.
Votes aye, motion carries. Mr. Gah, you have a comp and classification study.
Thank you, President Decker and Commissioners. As you'll recall, in February, the Commission authorized an RFP for consultants to complete a compensation and classification study for the city. 5 proposals were received. An initial review was conducted, and 3 were chosen to be reviewed further. A committee of staff members and commissioners reviewed the proposals and is recommending that the proposal from Graves Consulting from Tulsa, Oklahoma be accepted in an amount not to exceed $28,245.
Okay, any questions for Mr. Gah on the comp and classification study agreement?
Once this is signed, Mr. God, did they give us an idea when they can start right away, or?
They will have a conference with Ms. Carlson and get that started, but I think they're ready.
Commissioners, I can also state that HR and Shelley and I did receive an email from Graves, if this is approved, they would like to have one even before June 1st. So it'd be next week, we just start with just phone calls. So they want to get down on the ground and start moving.
Mr. President, Ms. Carlson,
Yes.
what do we have budgeted for this study?
Actually, there was no dollar amount. It was anything that was left on the wage, on the wage compensation that was put in the contingency budget during that time period of when we were talking about the wage study. So we have approximately 300, 400,000 that was set to the side when we went to the different one. So it's just an amount in there.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Any other questions, comments? Hearing none, I'd look for a motion on this wage, comp, and classification study.
Mr. President, I move to approve.
We have a motion to approve by Ms. Walla
Second.
and a second by Mrs. Trustum. Any further questions, comments? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and vote. Ms. Walla?
Aye.
Mrs. Trustum?
Aye.
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion carries. Next item up, Mr. Guy, you have a city administrator interim staffing plan.
Yes, thank you, President Decker and Commissioners. At the last commission meeting, I submitted my resignation and then immediately started working with the city executive staff on an interim staffing plan. Couple of things to discuss tonight is to get that in place, and then you could provide them some guidance in potentially starting a full-time search process. As did occur last time, and really through job descriptions, in the absence of a city administrator, the deputy city administrator should fulfill that role. That's what was done last time, and that's my recommendation that you would consider doing that again. However, this is the budget season, and it was the same timing at the last time. It's pretty difficult for Ms. Carlson to assume all of her roles as the DCA of Finance during budget season, and then keep up with all the day-to-day operations of the city administrator position. So we're recommending that Police Chief Dustin Dossinger be promoted up to an interim deputy city administrator to provide that two-person leadership team in the city administrator's office. He will still assume his duties as police chief, so they'll both assume some extra duties. And for that, I'm just going to turn it over to Ms. Carlson and Chief Dossinger for a little clarification on what they think that would look like.
Thank you, Administrator Kaw. President and Commissioners, I do accept the challenge for the interim. I think that it's a really good plan that we stated with a team effort on this. As I see it, I would be taking on, I have 8 departments under me right now. I would take on like 4 more and be under the administrative services area. And then sharing the committees that Mr. Gaw was on and split that so that I could still attend the committees that I'm on, plus attend the ones that he needs to be, even if it is virtual. But with the budget season, with the reforecasting of the 20, I would really appreciate the team effort of having Chief Dossinger as part of that team to be able to help me with the other departments and be able to oversee some of those departments, and then him and I work together to facilitate all of it. We also have the executive team. The executive team is awesome. They have always supported me and in the last time, and they supported both Dustin and I during this when we've had to come forward on other projects that we've had to do. So I stand for any questions that you might have, any concerns you might have with this, but I would hope that you would consider both the team effort.
Ms. Carlson,
Yes.
the committees that you sit on, are there any that can be suspended for the summer to free up your time for this other stuff?
Yes, I probably could. Sunrise Youth I also sit on. I am also the Rotary. I took over on Rotary. They've just started getting the meetings. We still have them virtually also. There's I think the only thing that I would really like to, maybe not, I know that President Decker sits on the Community Relations one. If, you know, if I don't have to attend that because Mr. Decker, or President Decker is also on that one, that was one that I could also do.
Suspend.
Yes, summer.
I think it's something that
And then I,
should allow her to do.
Yeah. Well, I think we can make the appropriate arrangements to spread out some of these engagements.
the other thing that is also in this process, even though it's coming in the 1st of June, in 3 months, we will be starting the audit process also, along with the budget. And then the new commissioners come on June 23rd, and we have to, and the legislation has, or excuse me, the state has not extended our period to submit our preliminary budget yet, so it has to be in before August 10th. So I'm on a time crunch of a month and a half for budget, and then we go right into audit, and with the new firm and stuff, so.
So we're actually, we have a meeting in June 2nd.
Correct.
then,
Commission meeting on June 2nd, yes.
Right, we'll also have one on the 16th, and if the results are in, they'll you said something about them being seated on the 23rd.
Yep, according to the state rules,
Okay.
they are
They're-
seated out
okay.
as of the 23rd.
Okay, so we'll be able to have 2 more meetings as this commission,
Right.
so.
And I plan on using this time period for the draft of the commission to work on the reforecasting of 20, and then also the first draft of the 21 budget. You've been there, you've seen it, and you know, you give good forward emotions, excuse me, I shouldn't say emotions, I should say projects and things that are coming forward to give the new commissioners a chance to see what's coming forward and why.
Not to pile on, but from the work session, we probably should start that, the process of
The search.
with the search, finding a search firm for the city administrator, so.
Yep. And with that, just telling you what I feel that I can handle. I would like Chief Dossinger to also understand that when he's coming through the DCA, if we split some of the departments, I feel that that would be a real advantageous for me. And then because there is things that we need to address, and I feel that if we have that team effort, that we can address a lot more on the situation. So with Chief Dossinger, I'm asking that if he would handle public safety, public works, and engineering as his directs, and I will handle the rest of the 4 departments that were also under Mr. Goff, and along with mine, and then his would include those. So that's what we're looking at.
The last time, we also adjusted compensation.
Correct. And I think Mr. Goff has a comment on that.
This is typically what we do for promotions. We've done this in the past. We have a couple going on right now. 5% pay increase during the term of that change of duties.
Commissioner, do you have any,
Mr. President,
Mr. Trustman?
Ms. Carlson, what compensation did you receive last time?
I actually received where Mr. Kessel was at.
Okay.
I jumped from that one to that one.
Okay. So, safe to say that's more than
Correct.
5%.
But,
Okay, thank you.
you know,
But you also,
5 is fine.
yeah, but you also flew by yourself last time.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Had a great team to work with, but it was a lot.
Mr. President, so in this situation, who's going to be the direct CA contact?
I
The
will.
public will have, it will go to you first?
Yes, I will have the last decision or the final decision on anything, just as Mr. Goff has always had.
So would it be, Chief Dossinger really will be helping you more with the administrative stuff internally, operations side? where you will still continue your role with?
Yep.
Okay.
I feel that having two also keeps that communication going between all departments. The last time, that's all I did. I had meeting after meeting after meeting with all departments and all staff, and it was really hard to do actual day-to-day operations. And with this kind of a situation that we have now, splitting that would really help and still continue that communications. I don't want to drop the communications.
Any other questions?
Sounds like a good plan.
Okay, well, we have a consideration to approve their plan. Mr. Gah, your end date will be 29th?
Correct.
Okay. So this essentially is your last meeting.
It is, it is.
You'll be heading south, probably not as far south as thought, but south. Don't let them fool you, it gets cold in Aberdeen too, so. And there's way more geese over there than here.
Lots of ducks.
Lots of ducks.
And they still have wind.
So, I think it's a good plan right now. We do need to move into the process of getting that firm in place again to start our search, and we'll see what we have for a commission coming into the end of the month. And I guess that'll be your tiger to wrangle at the end of the month, so.
I would just like to clarify, do you want to go out for an RFP for the commission, or do you want to go
I would
again with
approach
the other
Mr.
search?
Basinger again, see if
Okay.
we can even, I think we've been pretty happy with Mr. Basinger, last two searches. So, yeah, if he can fit us into the schedule, if not, then we'll go through the formal process. And
Okay.
if we have to call a special meeting to approve that RFP, to get it done a little bit sooner, I think we can do that.
Will you or Mr. Dossinger be throwing your name in the hat this time?
No, I will not be.
Thought I'd ask.
All right. Any other questions, concerns? All right, I guess we'll need a motion to approve this plan.
So move.
Motion from Commissioner Steiner to approve the transition plan,
Second.
and a second by Commissioner Frederick. Any other comments? Questions? Not, we'll vote. Mr. Steiner,
Aye.
Mr. Frederick,
Aye.
Mrs. Trustum,
Aye.
Ms. Walla.
Aye.
Chair votes aye, motion carries. Mr. Gah, you have a restaurant liquor license.
Yes, thank you, President Decker and Commissioners. The Brick House Restaurant and Lounge located at 2 West Villard is changing ownership. The new owners have also operate the Crossing Restaurant, so for that reason, the restaurant liquor license at the Brick House does need to be transferred to the new owners. Staff recommends approval.
Okay, any questions for Mr. Gah on this? That's right, the liquor license approval.
Move to approve, Mr. President.
We have a motion to approve the liquor license.
Second?
The second. Any further discussion, questions? Hearing none, we'll vote. Mrs. Trustum,
Aye.
Ms. Walla,
Aye.
Mr. Frederick,
Aye.
Mr. Steiner.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion carries. Mr. Gah, you have a item from Odyssey.
Yes, thank you, President Decker. Commissioners, at the previous commission meeting, you instructed me to gather some information and provide an update at this meeting on the Odyssey Theater. Just as a reminder, kind of catching everybody up, as spring was nearing, construction fence was placed across the site, across the street at the site of the Odyssey Theater for planned construction. At that time, we believed utility work was imminent and going to be completed. A building permit application was also turned in at that point in time, so we started moving forward with all of that. At this point, the building permit has been approved. It has not yet been picked up and paid for. And the utility work has not started, nor any other types of construction work. And we're starting to hear lots of concerns about parking in the area. As you know, once some of that area is owned by the theater, some of it is still city parking lots, but under their agreement, they get an easement during the construction, so that's why the fence goes all the way around it. So really, the question started out as, can they get the utility work completed and then open up those small side parking lots? And it's really gotten a lot more complicated than that. There's some concern. The theater industry is one that has really been hit hard with the COVID situation. So they are looking at potentially putting back construction a little bit. And through the discussions I had with their ownership is really a point of contention is kind of to remind us all, the city has a 18-month buyback clause, and that 18 months has just passed, which enables you as a commission to buy back that property for 90% of what you were paid for it. That's a consideration I think has to be made. The contractors, the owners, would like to have that either removed or extended. You see in there a date of August 2021. I don't know that that's feasible. I don't know that just opening up small parking lots are feasible. So my recommendation is that this commission should consider that buyback option. And I would recommend doing so only after a public hearing has been held. So to give some folks an opportunity, if they have concerns about the parking, to voice it. If they have concerns about the theater not happening, they really want the theater, I think you need to hear that. Kind of in the work session, the public has an opinion, and giving them the opportunity to express it is very important. Helps make good decisions and transparent decisions. So if that's something you would want to consider, if you want to consider the parking lots being returned, I think the only way to do that is to have at least start with the discussion of the buyback option. And I would recommend, if you do that, to set a public hearing for the June 2nd meeting.
Ms. Winko, for us to initiate the buyback, do we have within that contract, there's a certain amount of time?
President Decker, Commissioners, the contract does not provide the time frame in which the city needs to notify the other party of when you intend to exercise. It simply states the deadline is within 90 days of the date of closing, which, according to the email and to my calculations, would have been May 7th. I would guess, and I agree with City Administrator Gaw, I think that's a question and a discussion that the city needs to have sooner rather than later, so that you can make a determination on whether you're going to exercise that option or not.
I tend to agree. We went into this project with high hopes, and right now my hopes aren't that high that it's going to come to any
Ms.
kind of a, construction project any time soon. So, you got a comment, Mr. Steiner?
Yeah, I think you're right. Unfortunately, COVID and other things have happened, and I don't know if they've been upfront with us over the couple of years here. We've been told that everything's a go, and then all of a sudden it's not a go. We've been told that the post office feels a done deal, now it's not a done deal. I think started out plain, I think the city should repurchase it to 90%. Either hang on to it and open it all up for parking, or sell it again. I know there's an individual that would be interested in buying it and keeping it parking. That's an option that you'll probably get if you have a open hearing on it and so on. So I think the attitude on the parking downtown is different now that they're able to experience what it is being shut off, for parking. So I would be in favor of doing the right of repurchase.
And that's without having the public hearing, you just go ahead.
I have no problem with the public hearing.
Okay. I think we should move forward with the public hearing at our next meeting. Well, my understanding is it's going to be an open meeting, so if people want to come in, they can. And probably going to have more than just the theater people there if we do also have the striping issue. So it could be a full house, could not be, I'm not sure. We'll still give the option of people to call in if they want to call in. But Also, Mr. Steiner, I'm in favor of buying it back, but we'll have the public feedback. I know there's plenty of public feedback online, if anybody's read anything. So,
Mr. President. For me, I'm on the other side of the fence here. I mean, they've invested a lot of money into what they've done to this point. I'm not open to giving them an extension to 2021, though. I would be open to a 60-day extension till they get the MDU work done. And once that's started, I would feel a little bit more comfortable that this is going to proceed. But as far as buying it back, I'm open to the public hearing. We can discuss it. But I mean, we're talking, they've invested hundreds of thousands of dollars in this project already. So with COVID, I'm open to giving them an extension, but not out to 2021. So,
but I don't foresee them building before that, if that's their timeline.
but if we give them 60 days, they said they're going to still start the MDU work as soon as possible, as long as we get an extension. Well, we tell them, you start the MDU work, we'll extend it for 60 days. If nothing starts, then we can still buy it back.
There's a hole in the middle of the parking lot. I don't know if that's MDU or not.
No, I don't think that was MDU. That was.
I mean, if they're going to spend the 60 grand to get the utilities moved, I would guess the project's going to probably move forward. And then we can talk about the later date, but it's just my opinion. I mean, just the barricades must have cost them $10,000 to set up. I mean, you just don't do that kind of stuff if you don't have any intention of actually doing anything. I mean, there's not a movie theater open yet in the country maybe just this weekend, the first ones that have opened.
Any thoughts on this?
See what the public has to say.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can do a public hearing, but I mean, they have to show some good faith on their side too, so.
Mr. President,
Mrs. Trustin?
Mr. Gah, when visiting with them, did you visit with them about the right of repurchase?
Yeah, they'd really like the commission to either buy it back or extend it before they move forward.
Okay.
So I think they're open to this public hearing as well.
So
This-
they're not necessarily saying, please don't buy it back.
Correct. They, kind of like Commissioner Frederick said, they've invested some money. It is going to take some time, it sounds like, before they move forward, and if the city commission doesn't want to give that amount of time, then they understand that and would accept the buyback option. Just President Decker, if we could, we would like that motion to set that hearing, and just to remind you, we are up at a time for another public hearing, if we could move along.
So we'll look for a motion to have a public hearing on this matter.
So move.
We have a motion by Mr. Steiner,
Second?
second by Mr. Frederick. Any further discussion? All in favor of the public hearing, state aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Proceed with the public hearing. We have a public hearing scheduled for 5 p.m. this evening. It is a rezoning petition, the southwest quarter of Section 8. Mr. Hadley, you will be presenting.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. This item, excuse me, tangled up my. It's the first reading. It will be, I believe, ordinance 1692. It's 46 acres that corresponds to an item that's later on your agenda called the Bluff subdivision, and it's along 8th Street Southwest. It's basically just east of the existing golf course. The subdivision itself is going to be catering to people who want to live adjacent to the golf course. Planning Commission held a hearing on May 14th. There wasn't any opposition or major comment on there. The Planning Commission recommended approval, and so does staff.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hadley. Any questions for Mr. Hadley on this rezoning petition? Any questions? This is a public hearing. I'll open up the public hearing. Anyone wishing to make comments?
The conference is currently empty. You will hear silence or music on hold when connected.
Anyone wishing to call in and express any concerns with this rezone, please call 701-456-7006. And you'll be in contact with the City Commission to express your concerns. We'll give people the opportunity. We have a little bit of a delay, right, with the live? Anyone from the public with any concerns on this rezone, please call 701-456-7006. Any public comments? I'll let 2 minutes go by. Then we'll move right into,
Yeah, you could probably just
Yeah.
have your commission discussion if there's any.
while we're waiting to hear, is there any commission discussion on this item? We'll close the public hearing. I'm gonna leave this line hot. We've got public comments coming up. Any commission, any concerned commissioners on this? If not, I look for a motion on ordinance 1692.
Move to approve.
We have a motion to approve 1692 by Commissioner Trustum. A second by Commissioner Steiner. Any further questions, comments?
Mr. President, just a quick notification here. The ordinance, when it is approved, it will look a little bit different on the second reading. We have it simply identified as the township and range. We will have it identified with the meets and bounds legal description for the full plat for the next second reading. So that will look different.
Okay. But it won't change, it'll still be 1692. Okay. Okay. Any questions on that or concerns? Now, we'll go ahead and vote. Mrs. Trustum?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Ms. Walla?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion carries on 1692. We'll move into the public comments not on the agenda part of our meeting. If there are any public comments to items that were not on our agenda this evening, you can call into 701-456-7006 and state your concerns to the commission. Again, that number is 701-456-7006. Anyone from the public that has any concerns that were not on the agenda, please call 701-456-7006. I'll go ahead and close the public hearing. for comments not on the agenda. And we will move into the police department. They have a SWAT MOU. And Police Chief Dossinger will be presenting.
Good evening, Mr. President, members of the commission. I'm before you tonight with the memorandum of agreement between Sanford Health and the Dickens Police Department and the Southwest Tactical Team to provide a team medic. The medic would be Dr. Dustin Kuhn. We had a previous agreement in place with Dr. Saxon. Dr. Saxon has stepped off of the team. This would be an item that we have budgeted for in our existing Southwest Tactical Team budget. And the MOU, or memorandum of agreement, is kind of based off a Fargo model of the Red River Valley tactical team. So Dickens Police Department is requesting approval of this memorandum of agreement.
Okay, any questions for Chief Dossinger on this MOU with Sanford for the SWAT team? Is that the only medical professional that's on the SWAT team? Is just the one individual?
It will be. This individual expressed interest in joining the team.
Okay.
We are sending him to a SWAT basic course. He trains with our team on a regular basis. They do not charge us for any of the training components. Only when the team is called and activated would he charge to provide the role of a team medic.
Are we using any of our fire department EMTs?
Not in that capacity.
Okay. Not on the SWAT team, okay. I know some cities, they do.
Yep.
So. Any other questions for Chief Dossinger?
This is very useful when we operate outside city limits,
Right.
in the rural environments.
Any other questions? I'd look for a motion on the MOU.
Move to approve.
We have a motion to approve by Commissioner Trustum
Second.
and a second by Commissioner Walla. Any further discussion, questions? Now we'll go ahead and vote. Mrs. Trustum?
Aye.
Ms. Walla?
Aye.
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Move into engineering, and Mr. Kubis, you're up. You have a KLJ construction engineering agreement for 2020 for the mill and overlay. Can't hear Craig now. Volume, Craig. Any questions for Mr. Kubis on this agreement with KLJ? If there are no questions, I'd look for a motion.
Move to approve.
I have a motion by Commissioner Steiner,
Second.
a second by Commissioner Trustum. Any further discussion, questions on this agreement with KLJ for the mill and overlay inspection? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and vote. Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mrs. Trustum?
Aye.
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Ms. Walla?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion carries. Mr. Kubis, you have an RFP advertisement.
Mr. President.
Mrs. Trustin.
Mr. Kubis, I just noticed an error that we may need to fix in this advertisement. In the final paragraph, it says proposals are due on May 15th, 2020. I'm assuming that's probably not our date.
Okay, so that'll be completely changed, that you're looking for a June date then? Okay. My question would be on this reuse water site. You said you wanted to bring somebody on. Where are we at on that reuse water and that site and that contract that was negotiated with the refinery? I mean, right now, there's no frack water being bought anywhere. So, I don't know, Mr. Zuroff can maybe answer that, or?
President Decker, Commission, Mr. Kubis is correct. We do have the contract agreed to. There is a couple things in that contract. One is that connection to our wastewater system. I think that was about $800,000. That was part of that contract. I haven't heard anything more from Meridian. And this reuse water line is out for bid. So I think before we maybe accept that bid for construction, that we maybe try to get more information from Meridian on how that looks moving forward.
I would agree. I don't know that we need to put that line in right now if they're not going to hook up to it in the next 2 or 3 years. So
It's something that we've wanted to do to bring it up to that intersection, but maybe that's something we delay for a while.
Okay, so there's 2 amendments, Mr. Kubis, to this. You'd like to add that reuse line? And you're gonna also change the date? Change the date, okay. Any other questions for Mr. Kubis or Mrs. Zuroff or anyone else involved in any of these projects? Move to approve. Okay. We have a motion to approve
second.
and a second. So we have a motion to approve by Commissioner Steiner and a second by Commissioner Frederick. Any further discussion, questions? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and vote. Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Mrs. Trustum?
Aye.
Ms. Walla?
Aye.
No. Can't do that. Chair votes aye. Motion carries. Mr. Kubis, you have a letter of engagement for an SRF project. Any questions for Mr. Kubis on this letter of engagement?
Mr. Kubis, so if we delay this project, there wouldn't be any charges, would there, from them? This project ends up getting delayed?
Commissioner Frederick, to answer that question, typically in an engagement letter with a law firm, and I'll speak from experience, normally once those services are performed, then the fees would be then remittable. So if no work is performed or if you decide to delay, then Mr. Wagner would not be entitled to those fees, obviously. So.
Any other questions? Now I'd look for a motion on this LOE for this SRF project.
Mr. President, I move to approve.
We have a motion approved by Commissioner Frederick
Second.
and a second by Commissioner Trustum. Any other questions, comments, concerns? Hearing none, we'll vote. Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Mrs. Trustum?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Ms. Walla?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. And Mr. Kubis, you have some project updates. Okay. Any questions or concerns for Mr. Kubis on construction projects? I see none, Mr. Kubis. Or hear none. Okay, thank you, Mr. Kubis. Mr. Zuroff, you have a rail terminal agreement.
Yes, thank you, President Decker and Commission. This is an agreement we've been working on for a while. This is the Dickinson Rail Terminal, which is across 116 from the DPR refinery. They're upgrading their facility to work with the upgrade of the Dakota Prairie Refinery to the renewable diesel project. So this will be their upgrade. And with their upgrade, they'll want to connect to the municipal sewer system out there. And wastewater connections outside the city limits are required to have an agreement, and depending on the industry, also required to follow the DEQ pretreatment standards, and so that's what's in the agreement. DPR will be required to monitor the temperature, pH, suspended solids, and BOD. They will also be required to install a meter and connect to our SCADA system, and be charged the rates in the city's fee schedule. They're looking at about, I think, 10 to 20 gallons a minute. On the wastewater side, they'll also be pulling some reuse water, but it will be off the system of the Dakota Prairie Refinery. So that'll be off the Dakota Prairie Refinery agreement. If any questions, I would be glad to answer. Staff recommends approval.
Any questions for Mr. Zuroff? Hearing no questions, I'd look for a motion on the Dickinson Rail Terminal Agreement.
Move to approve.
We have a motion to approve by Commissioner Walla
Second.
and a second by Commissioner Steiner. Any further questions, comments? Hearing none, we'll vote. Ms. Walla?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Mrs. Trustum?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, motion carries. Mr. Zuroff, you have an Apex task order for a water meter replacement project.
Yes, thank you, President Decker and Commission. I believe I've updated the Commission in a couple of meetings on our register replacement project. The registers themselves have reached their life, and so we're replacing those MIU interface units. We've replaced approximately, I think, 500 to date, but at this pace, it'll be 10 years before we replace ones that are needed. So we need to increase the pace and complete a larger project. Ferguson did send us agreement on installation of the 500 units just for the install price, and it was $325,000. I think that's a fair price, and with Neptune, but the agreement was 2 to 3 pages, and normally working with larger projects, you know, we require the EJCDC documents. We have a start date, a completion date, maybe liquidated damages, bonding, things like that. And I think a project this size, we need to step up into that realm of projects, because the install 325, Plus, we'll be purchasing the MIUs themselves from Ferguson for about $800,000, totally with the cellular towers. So in the long run, this will be about a $1.2 million project. I feel we need more oversight on this project. Right now, our staff can keep up with what we're doing, but there were some issues even with the 1 to 200 we were trying to do, just because there's not enough staff to try to watch and help quality control and quality assurance and dealing with installation of that many MIUs at one time. Also, in the agreement that I would like Apex to develop would be protocols for COVID-19, and like I said, at least a completion date and some other things that we will have as a project. And so I guess if there's any questions I can answer, we need to move forward, and I think this will help move it forward. This will also be a non-competitive type of project, and I'll be bringing in a request for exemption from competitive bidding on this project. I know I kind of said that quickly, but if there's any questions, I would be glad to respond and answer.
Any questions for Mr. Zuroff on this task order number 10? Mr. Zuroff, the reason for the non-competitive is just,
Because all our meters out there are Neptunes now,
Okay.
so this is an upgrade to a Neptune module. And we did look at originally, knowing that these batteries were going bad, we looked at the meters themselves. Is this a project that we need to replace all the meters along with the MIUs? But we did a sampling of meters throughout town, had them run, tested, and they still met within the accuracy. So it became, instead of replacing all the meters and MIUs, just the MIUs. So it was the decision to just stick with the interface replacements, not the meters. If you remember originally, I think I had over $2 million for this project, or $3 million, because I didn't know if we had to do meters or MIUs. A couple years ago, this has been in our project planning. So that's why I would request a non-competitive bid, because they are existing Neptunes, and that's what would have to replace with.
any other questions for Mr. Zuroff? If not, I'd look for a motion on Apex task order number 10.
Move to approve.
We have a motion to approve by Commissioner Trustum.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Frederick. Any further questions, comments on this task order? Hearing none, we'll vote. Mrs. Trustum?
Aye.
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Ms. Walla?
Aye.
Chair votes aye.
Thank you, Commission.
Mr. Zuroff, you have the bid for the Westridge improvements.
Right, I believe that is in your packet. The bids were received May 14th, before the original packet went out. We had 3 bids for the Westridge Road improvements. We had Wind Construction, Martin Construction, and Cordova Construction. Low bid was Wind Construction for a total of $820,787.78. Highlands Engineering has reviewed the bid package and agrees that Wind Construction was the low bid and everything was in line. So the recommendation is to approve the low bid of Wind Construction for that price. If you'll notice on the engineer's estimate, it is over the engineer's estimate by almost over $70,000. One of the things that was discussed was the perform pattern pavement markings. Some of those estimates were 2 to 3 times what the engineer's estimate was. So those are some of the things we're going to look into. Is it something that we can reduce the project by maybe doing epoxy painting right now and then come back maybe when prices look better to do the grooved and taped markings? But that's something we're going to try to work through. Mr. Kubis and I have looked at that, and that's something we'll work out and hopefully try to reduce that price a little bit.
Any questions for Mr. Zuroff? Thank you, Mr. Kubis. Any questions for Mr. Kubis? Oh, or Mr. Zaroff? Or part of this, I guess I was looking at part of this bid, and I know at one point we talked about structural foam. And this is, I see some foam in here, but not what I thought, so.
You know, it was looked at as, when they did a lot of the core sampling, they found that they feel that a lot of the settlement has occurred. And watching that, you can kind of tell, you know, there was, I think all of us were nervous about how much more it could settle, how many gaps were out there. But they, when they performed the core samples throughout, they found a lot of it looks like it has settled to the extent. So that's why there's the minimum foam, and maybe just some of the panels that aren't cracked, they're going to try to raise and not replace.
And correct those manholes.
Yes, yes. And instead of it'll be restriped too. Instead of 2 lanes on each way, it'll be a single lane and a turn lane. So that is what's changing. It was, Highlands looked at it for the speed in the corners and recommended that that's the direction we go.
Any other questions for Mr. Kubis, I guess, who logged off, or Mr. Zaroff? Now I'd look for a motion on the West Ridge improvement bid.
Move to approve.
We have a motion to approve by Commissioner Trustum,
Second.
second by Commissioner Walla. Any further discussion, questions? Hearing none, we'll vote. Mrs. Trustum,
Aye.
Ms. Walla,
Aye.
Mr. Frederick.
Aye.
Mr. Steiner.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion carries. We have a farm lease, Mr. Zaroff, with David Anderson.
Yes, thank you, President Decker and Commission. In your packet, there were 2 maps. I tried to do a quick map right when the packet was due, a little aerial to show that the grazing area that they're looking at, it's city property just west of the water reclamation facility. We currently have an agreement on that, most of that property for farming with Hondel, and alternate, because that's where we inject our biosolids, back and forth between those different sections on that side of the drainage where the grazing area is. This is area that can't be farmed or used for our biosolids injection, so it is not being used by that, and Mr. Anderson would like to graze his cattle in that small area, and so it's about 20 acres, and staff recommends approval.
Any questions for Mr. Zaroff on this farm lease or ranch lease?
Pasture lease, yeah.
Just make a big difference in the budget.
We're trying anything to bring in dollars.
300. Move to approve, Mr.
We
President.
have a motion to approve the farm lease.
Second.
And a second. Any further comments, questions for Mr. Zaroff? Hearing none, we'll vote. Mr. Frederick.
Aye.
Mrs. Trustum.
Aye.
Mr. Steiner.
Aye.
Ms. Walla.
Aye.
Chair votes aye, motion carries. Mr. Zaroff, you have the hazardous tree removal improvement district.
Yes, this is an annual ordinance that's done for the ability to homeowners to get put their improvement district of tree removal on their taxes. I have the wrong ordinance here. So this is done annually to property owners to voluntarily participate in tree removal, so that they can be put on their taxes. It's been done some of the times. I know a lot of the Dutch elm disease has been used by property owners that had to remove it, and instead of paying, they put it on their taxes, and this is just a citywide assessment that allows that to happen.
Okay. This is resolution 24-2020. Any questions? Comments? Hearing none, I'd look for a motion.
Mr. President, move to approve.
We have a motion to approve 24-2020 by Commissioner Frederick,
Second.
A second by Commissioner Trustum. Any further questions, comments? Being none, we'll vote. Mr. Frederick,
Aye.
Mrs. Trustum,
Aye.
Mr. Steiner,
Aye.
Ms. Walla,
Aye.
chair votes aye, motion carries. And Mrs. Zuroff, you have a report, Tree City USA Award.
Yes, thank you, President Decker and Commission. The City of Dickinson has been awarded Tree City USA for the 27th year. I think that's great for the City of Dickinson to participate in this. They also have got a Growth Award. So Arbor Day Foundation names Dickinson Tree City USA for the 27th year.
All right, congratulations, Dickinson.
Yes.
So, all right, well, thank you for that, Mr. Zuroff. Any comments on the Tree City Award? Okay, I think that's all you have this evening for Public Works, right, Mr. Zuroff?
Yep.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
All right, we'll move into planning. We have some final plats, the Bluffs edition. Mr. Hadley.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. The Bluffs is the corresponding plat that's being proposed on the 46 acres that was on your previous first reading, or REZ-002 2020. This would be Resolution 25 2020. And basically it's along 8th Street Southwest, just east of the golf course. 15 lots in that proposed division. And there is one thing that we need to mention on this. We had the first reading of the zone change. This plat is contingent on REZ-002 2020 being approved at your second reading. So if this resolution is approved, it would be contingent that staff wouldn't sign, obviously the mayor wouldn't sign, and we wouldn't record this plat until that final approval of the second reading of the zone change. With that, the Planning Commission recommended approval, and staff would do the same.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hadley. Any questions on the Bluffs edition, which is Resolution 25-2020? Hearing none, I'd look for a motion on 25-2020.
Move to approve.
I have a motion to approve by Commissioner Steiner
Second.
and a second by Commissioner Walla. Any further discussion, questions on the Bluffs edition? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and vote. Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Ms. Walla?
Aye.
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Mrs. Trustum?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion carries. Mr. Hadley, you have the Riddles Acre, which would be Resolution 26-2020.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. This is a 4-lot rural subdivision in the ETZ. It's the extension of 21st Street, turns into 35th Street Southwest, basically just west of the new middle school and north of our water tower and the old Pinecrest development. It's a family subdivision, I can call it that, because last 2 years ago we processed 1 lot, and what they're doing right now is creating 4 additional lots for family members. There's going to be 2 homes built out there this summer. They probably have their building permits at Stark County right now. They're anxious to move forward and do that. So it is quite exciting from the standpoint that we all want kids to grow up in a community and then come back to that community, and this family seems to be doing that. So the Planning Commission recommended approval, and staff would do the same.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hadley. Any questions for Mr. Hadley on 26-2020? Hearing no questions, I'd look for a motion on the Riddle Acres subdivision.
Mr. President, I move to approve.
We have a motion by Commissioner Frederick to approve 26-2020.
Second.
And a second by Commissioner Steiner. Any further questions, comments, or concerns? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and vote. Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mrs. Trustum?
Aye.
Ms. Walla?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion carries. We have a special use permit from Sicklers. This will be Resolution 27-2020. Mr. Hadley?
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. This is a 20-acre site. It was considered Lot 1, Block 1, Sickler subdivision that was completed last year. It's along 33rd Street Southwest and the Dickinson ETZ. The public hearing was to create an event center, venue, wedding reception area. They're going to create a quite attractive, you probably see it in your packet, barn-looking structure, and have events out there. I think it's a great idea. They've spent a lot of time organizing how they're going to do that. They've actually talked to all the neighbors in the area. We had one neighbor during the plat that had questions about this. He called once again and just inquired that they're still doing the same thing. There were no comments or negative comments at the Planning Commission meeting on this special use permit application, and the Planning Commission and staff would recommend approval.
Thank you, Mr. Hadley. Any questions for Mr. Hadley on this special use permit?
Mr. President, it's a much-needed addition to our community. Looking forward to seeing this project come to fruition.
I would agree. So, again, this is Resolution 27-2020. It is a special use permit for an event center on the Sickler subdivision. Hearing no questions, I look for a motion.
Move to approve, Mr. President.
We have a motion from Commissioner Trustum to approve,
Second.
and a second by Commissioner Walla. Any further questions, comments? Hearing none, we'll vote. Mrs. Trustum?
Aye.
Ms. Walla?
Aye.
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, motion carries. That
Thank
is
you.
it, Mr. Hadley. Thank you. All right, with time to spare, Mr. Goff. So, commissioners, item 10.
I have one thing, and I'll make it quick.
Okay.
Mr. Obergay-Wich texted me, he missed the 5 o'clock call-in thing regarding the letter you sent us, pool and darts. Can we touch on this briefly before?
Aye.
Because he missed the call-in, so.
Okay. I honestly, I don't know if all commissioners got this. We received a letter about being able to allow bars to throw darts and play pool again. I have no issue with it.
I'll just touch on this a little bit and then let Chief in. This is something that came, we discussed it at staff meeting, sent an email to the subject. I haven't had a lot of chance to follow up on it. Much like a lot of things can reopen with a plan for COVID-19. So what we've suggested, these are all liquor license holders. So if they propose a plan on how they're going to address those strategies, that much like we do with a lot of other approvals of floor plans and stuff, that we feel that staff could give approval on those just once we know they have those. And it doesn't need to come to the commission, would be our thought.
The state basically gave them the guidelines already, and
Yeah, I think if they just provide us a plan with here's what we're going to do it, so we have it on file with their liquor license, I think we're fine.
The only problem is it's not the bars that own the equipment. Badlands Music owns the equipment and leases the space from the bars.
Right, but I think ultimately, I don't care if it's that person that puts together the proposals or the bars, I don't think it matters, but
I mean,
as long as they're showing how they're going to meet the protocol, that's all we
well,
care about.
The direction is very broad. It doesn't even mention pool and darts. And what I've come to see in the last weekend, that it mentions blackjack but not pig wheel. So pig wheels are open all over the city, but blackjack isn't because it's not specifically named in the ordinance. Well, it's basically the same thing. You touch chips and you stand and play, or sit and play. So
I agree.
blackjack, the chips are transferred back and forth. The darts, it's their own darts.
Yeah.
Pools, it's their own pool sticks.
Commissioner Frederick's point, pig wheel's open, you're pushing chips back and forth.
that's what I'm saying.
So, but Captain Dossinger, you had a comment?
Yes, I had conversations with you, Mayor, and then I also had conversations with the City Administrator Goff. That was after the email was sent, but I really feel it's between, the vendor for the darts and the pool tables and between the individual bar owners as far as what their comfort level is. And I think the best interest would be allow them to have an agreement between the bar owners and the vendors rather than have the city of Dickinson intervene with that aspect of it. That would be my recommendation. I would hate to have to go in with the floor plan and check out the spacing of the pool tables and the dart tables and even the gaming machines. But I think it's best interest if it fall back on the individual, what's the comfort level of the individual bar owners themselves and the vendor.
And I would agree with it. We've tried to work with this individual, but it seems to be they want something from the commission, and I agree. I don't think you should do that. I think if you're comfortable with it, just let them move ahead.
So, just to clarify, what's the issue exactly? Were they given direction from the city of Dickinson initially to?
Yes, when the
Halt?
initial, well, not to halt, but not to continue once the bar had opened. The initial initial guidelines is pretty great. They recommended that nobody stand, everybody should be seated. Obviously, dance floors are off limits. They didn't want anybody standing in the open bar spaces. Obviously, you have to stand to play darts and pool. So that was kind of we stayed consistent, and that was the recommendation that we have gave to the liquor establishments at that time.
So moving forward, we will say it's at the bar owner's discretion to how they want to move forward with having gaming
Correct.
or
Darts, pool.
Darts in the pool.
And if they feel that they can safely do it by social distancing and enforcing the sanitation, that's between them.
Following the recommended state guidelines.
I would agree with you, Chief. I think that's an issue that those individual liquor license owners and that company can work out. Is that the
You know,
direction you're looking?
We don't have enough man hours to go check if somebody's standing in a bar.
I mean, the state sent a letter, which he attached, basically saying that just, as long as they can maintain the appropriate physical distancing and sanitizing the high-touch areas, that they could operate regularly, basically.
So I'll respond back to Mr. Obagewicz and let him know.
Yeah, I think they were just under the understanding that the city wouldn't let them have pool and darts originally, so I think there was some confusion there, so.
I don't know if it's confused. We just want to be consistent, and the guidelines that had first came out were pretty vague.
They still, yeah, they still
Yeah.
are.
Still are.
So I'll convey that message to you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else, Commissioner? Well, I guess there's nothing else, so we'll go ahead and I'll have a motion for adjournment, and then we'll move into the BOE at 6.
So moved.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
We're adjourned.
You can take a break.
You didn't get it? You're on here.